Welcome. We're going to be talking about manifestation using your human design variables today. So stay tuned if you want to learn how your environment and your perspective arrows affect how you can manifest properly. So, a lot of times, manifestation in regards to human design is a little bit confusing. For one, we have types that are manifesting generators and manifestors, which doesn't actually have anything to do with the law of attraction aspect of things. And then also, there's kind of conflicting information about variables in regards to being a specific or a non specific manifestor. And that's largely because the original teachings of human design variables didn't really go into manifesting. And so I know for me, when people were talking about the perspective arrow, which is the bottom right variable arrow on your human design chart, we'll be putting over here somewhere, is called perspective. And a lot of times people would say that this perspective arrow was the arrow that would talk about how you manifest, whether you are a specific or a non specific manifester. And whenever I looked at that, I was just like, that does not ring true for me. And it didn't ring true for a lot of our clients either. And so when I was taking a recent course, because I'm always learning more about human design, the person that I was learning from was talking about the environment variable in regards to manifestation instead of that perspective arrow. And when I looked at that, which is the bottom left variable arrow, so they're right next to each other. So environment, perspective, and then above those we have digestion and we have awareness or motivation. And when I was looking at that environment variable, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. That resonates for me personally. And so I've been testing it with my clients and I've been seeing the exact same thing with my clients. It's like, oh, no, like that totally rings true. That's something nobody has ever told me. And now that makes so much more sense for me. And when I was digging deeper into why were people saying that this perspective arrow that has to do with external views. So perspective is literally how you take in the outside world. What is your view when you're looking at the external world? How is your brain processing it? And I'm like, why would how you are seeing the external world have anything really to do with how you manifest versus the environment arrow made so much more sense, because it's about the environment you're putting yourself in, not just like a physical place, but also like a mindset and how you're viewing things and putting yourself in the right place with the right people and the right energy. And that made so much more sense. It made so much more sense to me that the manifestation energy would come from the unconscious side of the chart. Because if you think about manifestation, it's not happening from a logical, you know, in your head conscious place. Like if you look at almost all of the law of attraction advice, it's talking about internalizing those things, right? Like it's talking about the subconscious, and that's why subliminals work, and that's why hypnosis can be a deeper way to manifest, right? Is because it's coming from a place of the subconscious, of the unconscious mind. And so it never made sense to me with this perspective arrow being something around whether you were specific or non-specific. So when I was digging deeper into these variables after seeing that environment variable really unlock something new in regards to whether you're specific or non-specific, I started seeing, oh, okay, this is it. So today, if you stick around, we're going to be talking more in depth about the environment variable, the perspective variable, and we're going to be specifically looking today at whether those arrows are left or right. So not that they're on the left or the right side of the chart. I know this is like where my ADHD at least goes, like there's too many lefts and rights, but we're going to have some graphics over here for you. And it's going to be talking about the direction of those arrows. So you'll see them in the images, whether those go left or right. We're not going to get too into the weeds on the environment variable as it pertains to the actual environment names. Today we're really focusing on just whether it is left facing or right facing. So this is very surface. And what I love about just looking at whether these arrows are left or right is you can get a really good broad picture of how you process. Because the variables really are largely about how we process things, both on an unconscious level in our bodies and a conscious level that's happening in our physical minds. So if you stick around, you're going to know whether you're a specific or non-specific manifestor. You're going to know how you can magnetize yourself for manifestation, as well as how you can allow that to come through, the lens or the allowing place that you can allow that to come through. So let's just dive in, shall we? So, environment. We're going to start here. Because if you do any real research into human design variables, which I'm presuming you've done some of if you're here, the unconscious variables, so the variables on the left side of the chart, if you're looking at it, are the unconscious variables. They tie to the unconscious planets and placements. And in human design, we need to align to those unconscious placements before we can really step into our full power on the conscious placements on the other side. So this is one of the reasons that we're talking about environment, which is on that unconscious side, before perspective, which is on that right side. Is these have a really strong interplay in human design. And so when you're in your right environment, that's when you're going to have easier access to the right perspective. So with environment variable in the context of manifestation is your magnet. Now, again, if you're familiar with human design, we know about the magnetic monopole, which is your G center, which is also an abundance area. But right now we're talking about magnet in the idea of magnetizing things to you. So let's see if any of this rings true for you, because this is where the pieces came together for me, and also when I'm talking to clients, is think about times where manifestation went easy for you. Think about the scenario of maybe the manifestation practice that you were using, and thinking about how easy it was to come through, and the things that you did in order to actively manifest that thing, as well as the things that you were doing after the fact. And I want you to kind of keep those in the back of your head as we discuss these things to see if this rings true. Because everything with human design is an experiment. None of it is written in, stone, so to speak. Everything is something that you need to experience and experiment with in order to take on board. So play with that and kind of keep that in your head, because that was what I was thinking about, like, oh, that makes so much more sense of why that was so much easier to manifest that thing than it was when I've tried these other tactics. And this is going to be really important if you have a lot of right-facing variables, because almost everything with law of attraction, and honestly in business in general too, business entrepreneurship, is very much advice for left arrow people, not so much right arrow people. So if you're a right arrow person, especially in these two positions, I want to stick around, because the majority of the advice isn't geared toward how you process. So getting into environment, this is the magnet. When you are in your right environment, you are going to be able to magnetize experiences, your desires, the right people to help you along your path. Everything is going to come to you naturally if you're in your right environment. Versus if you're in an environment that is not beneficial, it's going to be a lot harder to magnetize things to you. It's going to be a lot harder for things to flow. In human design, there are transference environments as well as your actual environment. And we'll get to those in a later video. But just know that if you're in transference or you're in shadow of environment, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be able to connect to those energies that are going to make manifestation easier for you. And again, we're not going to get into whether you're markets or kitchens or this or that. We are going to go a lot deeper on that in the future, so that you can see ways that you can align with your environment, even if it doesn't seem like you're in an area that is beneficial to that actual environment. So you might not live in the mountains, but you may be a mountain person. Hopefully none of you are living in caves right now, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But know that you can bring energies of any of those environments into your home in little ways. It doesn't always have to be this big, monumental move. You don't necessarily need to move to a new area. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Environment arrow. Again, that's going to be the bottom right arrow. We're going to do a little image here for you. And that is environment. So we're not going to get into whether you're markets or whether you're kitchens or caves and all of that jazz. Right now, we're just focused on whether this is right facing or left facing. And really, environment is how you magnetize things into your life. The right people, the right situations, the right desires come through easily when you're in your right environment. With human design variables, it's important that we kind of embody these unconscious arrows first. So the arrows that are on the left side of the chart, we need to embody those to more easily step into the conscious expression, which is on the right side of the chart with right arrows versus the left. My ADHD with these lefts and rights. So the environment arrow is going to be your magnet. This is how you magnetize your desires into your life more easily. And what this means in terms of manifestation is how you go about your manifestation. What I mean by this is there are tons of manifestation practices. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, you have probably seen tons of them. Everything from vision boarding to gratitude journaling to detailed journaling to ideal day and meditation, hypnosis. It goes on and on, right? There's so many practices. Esther Hicks, with her book with manifestation, I think she has the ask and is given, and then there's also like specifically for money, and there are so many exercises in those books that are fantastic, by the way. But a lot of the advice is very much for left facing arrows. So let's talk about the left facing arrow in the environment. Left facing arrow is active, focused, and engaged. And this is going to be more structured, logical, intentional practices like those detailed journaling practices, like vision boards, like creating detailed plans, getting uber specific, if you will. So when you're manifesting, if you have a left-facing arrow in this area, I have a left-facing arrow in the environment arrow. And for me, detailed journaling is definitely what works best for me. I have tried more, let's say, soft practices with law of attraction, less detail, less focused, more feeling-based practices. And those never really aligned for me. For me, I need to write it down. I need to get uber specific with what I want, really nail down all the aspects of the thing. So whatever I am manifesting, I want to be super clear about what it looks like, what it feels like, what that means for me, down to the last detail. And for me, journaling works really great with this. I would do gratitude journaling, and then I would go into essentially future focused wording. So in law of attraction, a lot of times the act as if situation. So I would do gratitude journaling of the things that I'm currently grateful for. And then I would do essentially my manifestation practice next and phrase it as if I had already received this. So phrasing it as if it was already later that day or the next week and I had already received these things. And for me, that always worked super great. It was super detailed, really easy for me to lock into. And that was when manifestation generally was more easy for me as well. On the complete opposite, the co-founder of Acquiring Human Design, Katie, she has a right-facing arrow here. And anytime I talked about these very detailed practices, or anytime she was looking into law of attraction and it was something very detailed, it was vision boarding, it was, journaling, it was all of the things that work well for me, and she would just not be able to connect to it. She just wouldn't be able to connect to it. She was much more in the mindset of, I know what I want, and it doesn't really matter how it comes through, and it doesn't really matter too much about the particulars. This is the overall thing that I desire. And for her, meditation worked really great, right? Just meditating on the feeling of having the thing that she desired and being much more laid back with it, a lot less specific. So if you have a right-facing arrow here, passive, receptive, observational is really the key energy of a right-facing environment arrow. You thrive on practices that allow you to relax and absorb, such as meditating, daydreaming, or simply being present in your space. So it seems a lot less active, right? So I don't always love the word passive because I feel like it sounds unengaged with what you're doing. But it is something where it is an allowing place versus a creating place. And that's a conversation we have a lot in human design, whether you have kind of this yin or night energy, or if you have this yang and like very day energy to how you go about the world. And this is also very much seen in left versus right facing. So right facing arrows often have that yin and that night moon energy. And the left facing is much more on the day yang energy. So are you creating from a relaxed place, or are you creating actively and engaging actively? And when I started bringing this to my clients, because again, a lot of the advice out there is more geared on the perspective arrow, which we'll get into what we've really seen that to be, instead of the manifestation practice at the front end of it, the magnet part of it, the activation of your desires, of the process of manifesting. So you want to take on board with the environment, whether this is left facing, whether this is right facing, whether you need to be in a more relaxed present space, or if you need to kind of be more initiative, be more on the logical, focused journaling side, or if you need to be in a more relaxed receiving place in order to get the ball rolling. And that's really what the environment variable is. It's how we get the ball rolling with manifestation. It's that first step process. And now we're going to start talking about the perspective arrow. The perspective arrow, again, is exactly opposite of the environment arrow on the chart. So the perspective arrow is on the right side of the chart, and it is the bottom right. And this is the alignment and the allowing spot. So environment is your magnet and your activation. The perspective is the alignment and the allowing side. And this was kind of the next level connection for me, was that the perspective arrow does still have to do with manifestation. It's just not in the way that a lot of people talk about it. So with the environment, I think is really what most people are talking about with specific or non-specific. If you are doing a manifestation practice, should it be specific or should it be non-specific? Should it be in a state of allowing, or should it be in a state of creation, in active creation, in engagement, if you will? And perspective, on the opposite side, is a little bit more of a non-tangible aspect of manifestation. So with manifestation, we obviously need like the impetus of what do we desire and how do we pull that in, and having an idea of what we want to come through. That's the environment energy, whether that should be left or right, specific, non-specific. After that, it seems like, oh, well, you just let go, right? A lot of times you'll hear just like, oh, we'll just allow it to come through now. And what I see with the perspective arrow is what you do after your initial manifestation practice. So I am a left-right. So I have left for environment, I have right for perspective. And so for me, after I write all of those detailed things, I'm not looking at it every day after that, right? Like I'm moving on. Like I already asked for that thing, now I'm moving on. When manifestation has come through clearly for me, it's because I moved on. There have been manifestation practices that I have tried that were very much geared toward write down your top 3 goals every single day, or your top 3 desires every single day, or write down your top 3 desires and then look at your vision board every single day. I never aligned with that aspect of manifestation, the after part, if you will, the part where you're waiting for the manifestation to come through. So for me, I need to be very engaged, very active, very specific when I'm doing the initial ask. But when I'm in the place of waiting for it to come through, the receiving part, the tangible reality side of manifestation, the part where it comes through to you and manifests in your physical life, that part I am right facing. And right facing perspective is an allowing energy. So letting it go, allowing, now would be the time to meditate. Now would be the time to get into the right feeling place and make sure that your environment stays in a place where you're manifesting and you're magnetizing, but being in a much more observational stage after the asking has happened. So we're going to go into perspective. Perspective is how you see the world. It's how you interpret the external world. And it's how that external world shows up for you in manifestation. And we want that external world to now show us the thing that we manifested using our environment, using that correct place, correct time. If you have a left arrow, so maybe you're left instead of left right, like I am. If you're left, you're going to get really specific on the asking, journaling, vision board, get specific with the details, get in the weeds of what you desire, have a very clear step-by-step, type A personality aspect of your manifestation. And then if you're left, you may also have a practice of every single day coming back to the thing you asked for. And not in I want to be clear that there's a state of allowing in general manifestation, regardless of right, left, day, night energy. You need to have a level of detachment, I think is probably the best way to describe this, is regardless of what you're manifesting and whether you're specific or non-specific, there needs to be a level of detachment. So if you're left, it can't be coming from a place of this hasn't shown up yet. Is really what's trying to drive home, is it can't be in a state of this hasn't showed up yet and it should have shown up and I'm upset, right? Like that can't be the way you're going about things. And it might not be a daily thing to go back over. It might be weekly. It might just have that vision board whenever you see it. It might be journaling and kind of reinforcing some of those desires that maybe haven't come through. But another way that it can really be utilized, the way you can utilize this energy, right? Human design is all about how do you utilize your design in the best possible way. It's not always about something that comes naturally to you. It's how do we consciously use this energy. You can use that left energy in the alignment part of manifestation by actively noticing opportunities, by being in the present moment so much as noticing when an opportunity is presenting itself, noticing when the right person steps into your life and going, I think that this has to do with my manifestation. I think this person came into my life for a very specific reason, and I'm going to specifically go and see if I can foster that. I'm going to specifically and actively go through and see if this is an environment or this is a situation that is coming to me because of something I asked for. Now, if you're a right-facing arrow in perspective, again, receptive, open, a little bit more passive. It's going to be intuitive. It's going to be more of that night energy. You're going to align by letting go of the specifics, trusting the universe will deliver in the best way possible. And this is the thing, if you're right, then literally your entire manifestation process, which is very much the opposite of what most people will say for manifestation advice, is purely in a state of, I desire this general idea, I desire this general feeling, and I'm going to give it up to the universe to give it to me in the way that is best suited to me. And I completely understand, and I want to go over the fact that if these arrows are not facing the same direction, like they are not in mine. So again, I have a left-facing environment, right-facing perspective. It can feel difficult because these feel like opposite energies. But in human design, when there are opposite energies, there's always a play of energy that can flow back and forth. It is a type of channel. It is a way that we can align to that energy at the right time. And I want to, again, kind of hammer in this because it's not something I've seen anybody else talk about, is that the environment is the asking, it's the magnetization, it is the activation of your desire. And that perspective is the allowing, it's the alignment, allowing something to come through, the way that you can detach from the outcome. And if you are left, a true detachment or a true allowing or a true however the universe wants to give it to me probably isn't going to be something that feels aligned for you. It's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for you to be able to latch onto that feeling. And you may need, instead of fully detaching and saying, universe, however it comes through, you may need to get your mind on something else, right? Like shift your focus to saying, I know this manifestation is coming through, and I am going to focus on everything that seems to be aligning to that desire. I am going to be actively looking for people, places, and situations that are helping me in this desire. And so that you aren't trying to get into the passive feeling. Because I know for me, anytime somebody told me to get into a more passive, more receptive, open place on the asking side, it never felt right. It never felt right. It always felt difficult. It always felt incongruent with who I am. And that was something I struggled with. And it really made me feel detached from the variables for quite a while until I started seeing these people with more nuance around the variables that I was like, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. And when I've played with clients with these perspectives, this shift of perspective, and showing the environment variable being how you ask, and now this perspective variable being how it comes in, it has completely been a game changer. And I've seen it especially with right-facing arrow people, because we are headed into a direction where there's a lot more right-facing arrows than there used to be. A lot more. As we head into 2027, big year in human design, we're shifting into a new incarnation cross, a very right arrow receptive night energy cross instead of where we're coming from, which is a planning cross, which is very yang, very day, very left facing arrow energy. And we're seeing more and more charts, especially with people that were born past 87, is a lot more of those people have more right facing arrows. And a lot of advice in business, in manifestation, in entrepreneurship, in general, in almost everything, is very left arrow energy. And I've seen a lot of struggle around the right energy, the right facing energy, that there just isn't as much advice. There isn't as much access to that kind of information. So I really want to hammer this in and really have you play with this, if you're, especially if you're a double right, but even if you're a left right or a right left here, play with how that receptivity can work for you and play with kind of opposing information. And I think a lot of human design really helps you weed out what does work for you specifically, because nobody can really tell you what works for you except for you. And that's why we encourage the muscle testing so much. And this can be a great area for muscle testing. Go through manifestation practices and use your muscle testing to see if that manifestation practice aligns with the arrow, with the right or left facing arrow that you have in your chart. And we would love to hear from you in the comments below. Does this feel more aligned? Have you seen people talk about specific, non-specific manifestors in regards to that perspective arrow, and have you felt incongruent? Because I could see if you have the same arrow on both sides, that maybe that feels right. I would love to see if you have it opposing like I do, if you also were like, doesn't really connect to me, and now seeing this through a different lens of the ask versus the coming through, if that feels more aligned to you. I would love to hear from you down below, and any other questions that you have about the environment and perspective arrows. We'll definitely be going more and more in deep with the variables as we proceed, but this was something that we've been talking about in our own lives that I've seen really create a lot of amazing changes for people and really open up people to allow them to be themselves, which is a huge factor of human design in general. So let us know down below if this has been helpful, and if you have any questions or you know what you would like to see in upcoming video, drop that in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.